everyone, and welcome. I'm Judy Huntington, President of the College of New Rochelle. I'm delighted that you joined us this evening for what I am certain will be a very exciting and engaging discussion on strategies to start out, step up, or start over in your career. The time you spend with us this evening is going to be most valuable. Next to your college education, of course, I think it might be just one of your greatest investments in your future. Tonight, I'm welcoming back Carla Harris, who is with us this evening to discuss her new book, Strategize to Win. You may remember that Carla was here just a few years ago to discuss her first book, Expect to Win, and shared with you Carla's Pearls of Wisdom. Carla talked about your success equation and how to message yourself properly. She spoke about the importance of understanding your perception in the marketplace and to bring your authentic self to the table every day and to take risks. Because fear, these are in her words, has no place in your success equation.
Absolutely.
And then expect to win. We were so overwhelmed by the success of that book and that evening that it really is a great privilege. It gives me great pleasure to welcome her back again. I can promise you that this new book, Strategize to Win, will serve as a valuable resource that will steer you to finding the career that is right for you. In this book, Carla Harris turns the word leader into an acronym of strategies for you to employ. But let me tell you a little bit about Carla Harris. Carla is a remarkable woman of extraordinary leadership, generosity, faith, good humor, and wisdom. She received her BA in economics from Harvard University, magna cum laude, and her MBA with honors from Harvard Business School. Carla is Vice Chairman, Global Wealth Management, Managing Director, and Senior Client Advisor at Morgan Stanley, responsible for increasing client connectivity to enhance revenue generation across the firm. She has extensive industry experience in technology, media, retail, telecommunications, transportation, and healthcare. Her clients have included UPS, Martha Stewart Living, Omnimedia, Ariba, Digitas, and many others. I'm very proud to say that both Carla Harris and her husband Victor both have degrees from the College of New Rochelle. Dr. Harris was awarded an honorary degree in 2012, and Victor, a graduate of both our School of New Resources and Graduate School, and is now a member of our faculty. We are so very delighted about that. Carla is recognized extensively for her extraordinary success and is found on Fortune's list the most powerful Black executives in corporate America and Fortune's most influential list. Black Enterprise Magazine's top 75 African Americans on Wall Street and top 75 most powerful women in business. Essence's the 50 women who are shaping the world, and Ebony's 15 corporate women at the top. In August 2013, President Obama appointed Carla Harris as chairperson of the National Women's Business Council. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And there's more. In 2014, Carla became chair of the Executive Leadership Council, the preeminent national organization of current and former Black CEOs, senior executives, and board members of Fortune 500 and equivalent corporations. Carla is also an active member of the St. Charles Gospelites and the Mark Howell Singers at her parish, where she nourishes her spiritual self at St. Charles Borromeo Catholic Church in Harlem. Many of you know that Carla Harris is an accomplished singer who has delighted audiences around the world with soulful renditions of gospel favorites. She has performed 2 sold-out concerts at Carnegie Hall, with another coming up this November. I'll put a little plug in. November 23rd?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
And released several albums. Today we call them CDs. But most notably, as a gift to our graduating students, she performed at the College of New Rochelle's 2012 commencement at Radio City Music Hall with 5-time Grammy Award winner, internationally celebrated American jazz musician, Wynton Marsalis.
Yeah.
And that is a gift our students have never forgotten.
Oh.
So thank you. Business magnate, Wall Street powerhouse, author, mentor, gospel singer, from Carnegie Hall to Radio City Music Hall to Moore Hall. With God as her guidepost, I'd like to introduce and welcome Dr. Carla A.
And thank you very much, President Huntington, for that wonderful, wonderful introduction. And good evening, College of New Rochelle. I am so excited to be back here again. As we were just talking, you know, it is such a privilege and an honor when you have the opportunity to share some of the things that you have learned after being a woman and a woman of color on Wall Street for 28 years. Yes. I mean, there were so many things that I did not know when I started my career. I will venture to tell you that I was greener than your sweater. Yes, I was greener than your sweater. And I embraced this whole thought that all you had to do was be really smart and work hard. So in my mind, I had that because I thought I was pretty smart, and I knew that there were very few people in the world that could outwork me because I can work really hard. But there was so much that I learned. And many of you know that I had the opportunity, as you heard, to write the book Expect to Win. And I wrote that book in 2009. And I wrote Expect to Win because I had something to say. I had acquired these hard-earned, hard-learned pearls, excuse me, and I wanted to share them because I knew that they could inform your success, that they would make the difference between your just thriving or surviving in the seat that you sit in or the seat that you aspire to sit in. However, I had no aspirations of writing book number 2 until, as I traveled around the country, especially over the last 6 years, I kept running into 2 groups of people. I'll call them the millennials and Xers, who kept saying things to me like, you know, I'm just starting out in my career and I'm interested in a lot of different things. And I don't know how to figure out what I really want to do. Or I took a job, am I standing in the wrong place for the mic? Okay, so I'll stand right here, okay. Or I took a job just to take a job 5 or 6 years ago because I was coming out of school. It was a tough economic environment and I had a lot of student debt and I just wanted to get a job. So now I'm trying to figure out, you know, what I should do because I hate this job and I don't know how to get out of it. I don't know how to reposition myself. If you turn it down, I'll speak louder. That way we probably won't have the feedback because I got a big mouth. I can do that. One of the benefits of being a singer. And then on the other end of the spectrum, I was running into people who were 20 years into their career. And they would say things like, you know, I've been doing this for 20 years. I'd like to try to do something different now, but I'm not sure how to reposition myself into this new thing because I haven't had any experience. Do I need to go back to school for this? Or I got fired on my last job. How do I message that now into a new opportunity? So it was very clear to me that there was content that the marketplace was asking for that wasn't out there. So that, frankly, is what motivated me to write Strategize to Win, because I had acquired some of the pearls that I thought would answer some of those questions. So tonight, I am going to give you 4 or 5 of the pearls from Strategize to Win. But you all know how this goes. 28 years on the street, yes, I'm an seasoned deal-making gal. And the way this goes, I will agree to tell you exactly how it is if you will agree to ask me anything that's on your mind when we get to Q&A. Do we have a deal? Yes. All right, let's get started. The first pearl that I want you to take away tonight is that your ability to get a new opportunity has very little to do with your previous experience. Very little to do with your previous experience. Yes, there are some jobs where your previous experience does matter, or whether or not you've had some exposure. So yeah, if you want to be a neurosurgeon or you want to be a rocket scientist, I will submit to you, you probably should have some experience in those areas. But otherwise, there are very few jobs where your previous experience is the dominant reason that you will or will not get that job. The key to a successful interview is to understand what the buyer is really buying. If you understand what the buyer is really buying, then you know how to connect the dots between who you are authentically and what they are buying. You should understand the key success factors for that particular job. When I got my first opportunity on Wall Street, the only job that I had on my resume was McDonald's. McDonald's. Now you might ask yourself, what does flipping hamburgers have to do with selling stocks and bonds? But when I sat in that interview chair, I said to the interviewer that I was made crew member of the month while I was still on probation. For those of you who don't know, McDonald's puts you on probation for 90 days before they actually will give you the job. I was made crew member of the month while I was still on probation. I had the highest grossing register every night. And I talked about the fact that I was made a manager while I was still in high school. And I also talked about the fact that I won the prize for suggesting sales. You know how you go into McDonald's, you say, can I get you a Big Mac? They're supposed to say, can I get you a large order of fry? I would always say, can I get you an apple pie with that? So I won the prize for suggesting sales. What did that say to the interviewer? Wow, she is respected by her peers. She has an appetite to win. She knows how to penetrate client thought, because I could get you to buy something you had no intention of buying. What do you have to do to be successful on Wall Street? You better be respected by your clients and your peers. You need to have an appetite for winning, and you need to know how to penetrate client thought. They could teach me about stocks and bonds. What they were really buying were those other attributes. Could I penetrate client thought? Would I be respected? Could I command a room? And did I like to win? So when you are interviewing, the first thing you should ask yourself is, what is the buyer really buying? What makes you successful in that particular role? Then think about what you did before. Let's look at Vincent. Vincent was in the military for 10 years. When he went in the military at 18, he had no previous experience. And they assigned him to the telecommunications unit. He had to learn about telecom pretty quickly because he was put out in the field where he had to erect telephone towers. He had to correct problems that they had in communications right in the middle of combat. When he decided to leave the military, he decided he wanted to do something in sales. And if he could do something in sales as it related to veterans, because he knew that space pretty well. Saw a job description that said preferred someone who has a master of social work, someone who has 5 years of sales experience, and someone who's a good problem solver. So he decided to apply. Now you say 10 years, telecom, what does that have to do with sales experience? But what do we know? How could he craft his story? The question was, tell me a little bit about yourself, Vincent. Well, I was in the military for 10 years. I didn't know anything about telecommunications, and I was assigned to the telecom area, and I picked that up pretty quickly. Within a month, they deployed me to the field. I was the #1 person that they called on when there were key problems of communication between each of the units. And the other job that I had while I was in the Army is I was assigned to help train some of the soldiers that were about to get put out of the Army, because they couldn't complete basic training. Either they didn't have the confidence, they didn't have the ability, but I never lost a soldier. I was able to train them and retrain them so that they were able to continue their careers in the military. I enjoyed my time there. I clearly stood out as a leader, and I decided that it was time for me to move on because I wanted to do something that would allow me to expand my skills. I think I'm a pretty good salesperson because I was able to build relationships with people who weren't really sure about whether or not they should stay in the Army. I was also able to convince the Army that they should keep them, and I learned how to be a great problem solver under pressure. Does he get the job? Why? What were they buying? They were buying somebody who was a problem solver. They were buying somebody who could build relationships. They were buying somebody who could work under pressure. They were buying somebody who could also listen. They were working with veterans, right? They needed to be able to listen. And oh, by the way, the job was selling them to corporations so that they would get hired. So he'd also have to sell some of those corporations on being able to take some of those candidates. So he had no previous experience in selling, no previous experience in placing people, but he also knew the customer because he had been in the military. But that was the only thing that was a commonality, if you will, in terms of what the job was going to be. But it was about understanding what they were really buying. Remember that when you are going into a new job interview, there are 3 things that they are looking for: your can-do, your will-do, and your fit. Your can-do is about whether or not you have the skills to be able to do the job. And if you get the phone call for the interview, you have already checked the box for the can-do, because they're looking at a lot of different resumes. So you should already have the confidence when you're walking in to do the sit-down interview that they pretty much already think that you can do the job. Now, I'm not telling you they won't ask you a few questions to test it, but the fact that you've been brought in, they've already seen something from your resume that suggests you can do the job. So now what they're going to be testing for primarily is your will-do and your fit. Your will-do is all about what motivates you. Are you selectively motivated? If it's a really great project, you're all about it, but if it's kind of a drudge project, you're really not going to be motivated to do it. Or if it's a high-profile project, you're going to be excited about it, but if nobody will see it, you're not going to be motivated to do it. So they're trying to figure out what motivates you. They're trying to find out whether or not you are tenacious, whether or not you are resourceful, whether or not you will deliver. So whenever I'm in an interview, I make sure when they're testing for the will-do, I leave them with those 3 messages. Oh, that I will deliver. I am definitely tenacious. I'm also highly self-motivated. So all of my story will incorporate those words, and I will communicate that message so that I will check the box on the will-do. Now, the last one is the fit. The fit is the trickiest one, because now they are assessing whether or not you fit into that company, whether or not you fit in with that team. And the reason the fit is the tricky one is because it is the one that is the most subjective, because it is a function of how the interviewer is seeing you and how the interviewer sees their own environment. So first of all, they need to connect with you. Do they dress like everyone else in this environment? Remember, every job has a uniform. Every job has a uniform. So don't think that you will change the norm. It doesn't matter how smart you are or how hard you work. If the uniform looks like this and you want to wear jeans, that's an inauthentic decision for you, because you are not going to change that environment. So you should make sure that you check out the environment before you walk in so that you are physically consistent with whatever that uniform is. I don't care if you work at McDonald's or you work on Wall Street. Everybody has a uniform, right? So first of all, make sure that you're consistent to the eye. Now it's about, are we grooving? Can we talk easily? Do you seem uncomfortable when you're speaking? Do you seem comfortable in your own skin? Are you comfortable asking me questions? So that's part of the fit. But the other part is how they see their environment. So let's say you have a lot of energy like me. Let's say you're very comfortable in your skin. If the person that's interviewing you is a person that's much more reserved, much more timid, and their environment is an environment that's very much like me, they may be thinking to themselves, boy, this is a tough environment for somebody to really assimilate. So if you're seeming really quiet, you might have a tough time fitting in, right? Because that's how they see their environment. But if they see their environment as very reserved and very calm, and you have all of that energy, they're thinking, ooh, they might not fit. So you can't ever tell how they are seeing their environment. And this is where you should really rely on your own authenticity and your own homework around what that environment is like. Don't go in cold. You know somebody at that company. That company has some kind of reputation. These days, everybody's writing about everybody on Yelp. Just go to Yelp and see what everybody's saying about it, right? But there is some flavor in the environment. Make sure you do your homework around that. And that way you can check, you can get to the fit box. Now, if you don't make it in the fit box, be comfortable with that. You don't fit in that environment. It is really difficult to have long-term success if you don't fit into an environment. So you should be evaluating that environment while you are going through the interview. And one of the questions that I love to tell people to ask, you know how at the end of the interview, if they say, do you have any questions for me? You should never leave that room without asking questions, because it communicates to the interviewer that perhaps you're not that interested in the job. You have no questions? You don't know anything about our company, really. You don't know anything about this environment, really, and you have no questions? That says you're not interested or you're not prepared. So do not communicate that to me by not having any questions. If you have no other questions, ask these two questions. What is the profile of a superstar in this environment? And they're going to give you adjectives. They're going to describe, oh, somebody who's resourceful. Oh, somebody who takes the initiative. Oh, somebody who can think ahead. They're going to give you that description. Now you can compare how they define a superstar against yourself. And if they are defining somebody that's inconsistent with who you are, that's not where you should work. The second question that you can ask is, when somebody doesn't make it at this company, why don't they make it? Or give me the profile of the last person you fired. That'll stop and make them think. But that's going to tell you what does not work in that environment. And if they describe something that is consistent with who you are, now you know, probably not a good environment for me. The time to evaluate the company is when you are going through the interview process, not when you get the offer. Because there'll be so much pressure for you to take the offer, particularly if you've been waiting for a job for a long time. But just because you're waiting for a job for a long time, do not jump and just take the first thing. You must be strategic about the jobs that you take, because it's not about this job, it's about the next job. So now let's talk about the second pearl. Where you enter will impact where you end up. So don't just go into a situation and say, I'm just going to get there and get my foot in the door, because then I'll be able to move to wherever I want to move. If the company has no precedence for moving from this line to this line, will be very difficult for you to move. And it has nothing to do with your intelligence or your capability. It has everything to do with the company's precedence. For example, if you come in and you say, I'm in operations, and those are great jobs, they are fabulous jobs in operations, and there is a whole hierarchy from going from the bottom to the top in operations. But if you come into an organization and say, I'm in operations, but now I want to actually go to the front of the line and I want to be in commercial sales, or I want to be in investment banking, it's not going to happen, because there's probably very little precedence for someone moving from operations to commercial sales to sales and trading or investment banking if you're in my business. No precedence. Again, has nothing to do with you, has nothing to do with your intelligence, has everything to do with their precedence of moving people. So another question that you should ask when you're going through the interview process is, as people move around in this company, how do they move around? Do they move from marketing to operations, from operations to the front office? When people get promoted, do you promote from within, or do you often bring people in from the outside? Or do you only bring people in from the outside if there's a specific skill that you need and you don't think that it exists in the company? But talk to me about how people move within the organization. That's going to tell you what their mentality is around moving people around the organization. And again, if they don't have precedence, don't fool yourself to think that you might be the exception. Not to say it won't happen, but in order for it to happen, a new leader has to come in and say, I'm going to anoint you. You're going to be my person, and I'm going to make it happen for you. But do you bet your career on that? Do you bet this decision on that? Probably not. And when you are taking a job, please, please do your homework before you go in around compensation. So let's have a frank conversation in this pearl about compensation. So often I found, particularly in tough economic environments, when people have been waiting for a long time to get a job, they say, I just got to get a job, I got to get a job, or I'll be happy to get a job. So if it means that they're asking me to take a step back in compensation, I might do that. Or if they're going to give me an offer that's above what I've been making, even though it's below what that position calls for. It's more than I'm making, so I'm going to take it. Remember, again, it's not about this decision, it's about the next decision. And if you get behind in compensation, it's very, very difficult to catch up. You have no negotiating leverage if you don't know what that role will command in the marketplace. I call it market price. So anytime you are looking for a job, you should know what the market price is on that job. And today, there's all kinds of information that will give you a nice range for somebody with your experience level, with this kind of profile, going for this kind of job. I'm going to give you two awful examples. I had a friend who was in a position, and she was a vice president, got a call from a headhunter. And the headhunter loved the resume, loved the phone interview, and said, "You're exactly what we're looking for." And what are you making? Well, the role that he was looking at her for was a job that was $200,000. She was making $75,000 in the role that she was in. So when she said that she was making $75,000, he went, "Oh, let me give you a call back." Why? He thought there was a disconnect. How could a candidate who was so great, so good, only be making a fraction of what that role calls for in the market? Either he was wrong and she wasn't that good, or she had poor judgment around her negotiations. Either way, he didn't want her, right? So that's why I said it has implications beyond making a bad call at that point. Another scenario, let's call her Cynthia. Cynthia is applying for vice president in a marketing company. She's in a role now where she's making about $85,000. But this vice president job, this job is 120 to 140. That's what it goes for in the market. So the interviewer loves her. She's talked to 8 people. She got the offer, and they said, "We're going to offer you 100. And she said, "Wow, this is great to get the offer, but I understand that this role is about 120 to 140 in the marketplace. And I think I could do a great job, but I was expecting that the offer would be 120 to 140. And the interviewer says, "But we're offering you 100. It's 15 more than you're making." What should Cynthia do? Take the offer? It's more than she's making. So how does she get out of it? What's the script? So here's the script. Wow, that's quite generous of you. However, I've done my homework, and as I said, the role commands 120 to 140 in the marketplace. I think this would be a terrific role for me. I think I could do a bang-up job in this role, and I could come in immediately and add value. I would love to be a part of the team, but I am sure you'd want me to get compensated for the contribution that I'm prepared to give. And if you gave me an offer somewhere in the range of 120 to 140, I would hit that bid. Did he give it to her? Absolutely he did. That brings me to my next point. You don't ask, you don't get. You don't ask, you don't get. There is power in your voice. The only person that has responsibility for your career is you. And you can't be so scared that you're not willing to ask. And women in particular sometimes have trouble asking for the money. But if you're willing to work that hard and you've done your homework, you've done the data, you know what the data is? You need to make sure that you articulate that. I will never forget when one of my colleagues said to me, "You know, Carla, I go in every year and tell them what I want to get paid. I tell them every year what I want to get paid." And I went, I can't do that. I can't say that. He said, "Yeah, I tell them." And then I started thinking about that. And I thought, wow, you know, what if I don't say anything and I get paid $150,000 this year. But what if I say something and I get paid $300,000 this year? Is my fear worth $150,000? And I was saying to myself exactly what y'all thinking. Absolutely not. So I began to practice. And it's about how you communicate. You must be strategic in how you communicate. So for a while I practiced in the mirror. I want to get paid. I want to get paid. I want to get paid. Finally I said, okay, got it together, said my prayer. I walked in and I said, you know, I have had an incredible year this year. I have been able to accomplish all of my goals and then went over the top on a few. And I know that you can't tell me anything about compensation because I know that compensation here is based on three things: how the firm does, how the department does, and how I do. And as I said, I've done quite well. And I just want you to know that it's important to me that I get paid this year, commensurate with the outstanding performance that I think I have contributed. And again, I know you can't tell me, but it was important for you to understand where I am on that. Thank you very much. Then I got out of there. Okay? But did I get paid? I got paid. All right? Fear, as you heard from the president, fear has no place in your success equation. If you have trouble with the words, be strategic in your communication. And being strategic means being able to articulate why you are worthy. It's not about you. Why is it important for the company to pay you? Why is it important for them to keep you? Make sure that's part of your language. Look at the words I use. I have contributed here. I think I've done a great job, right? I've done more than the contract. My contract was to come in and work every day. But I've contributed above that, above what was expected. So you have to tell me why it is worth it. And do not be fooled when you're in a bad economic environment and say, well, it's a tough environment. I know they're not paying people. I know it's hard to get a job. Let me tell you something. When a company budgets for a position at the beginning of the year, when they are doing their budget, they do not put a discount in the budget. If the job is worth $120,000, guess what's in the budget? $120,000. But if I can get away with paying you $90,000, I'm going to do that all day long, right? So don't think it's a bad economic environment they're paying down. Not happening. And also don't buy it. Well, it's a tough environment. Nobody's getting a bonus. Somebody's getting a bonus. And it may as well be you. So you should always ask. Don't say, oh, well, you know. No, you should always ask. I've had a good year. I know it's tough. I know it's tough. But some decisions have to be made. I just want to let you know. I've done my best, and I'm hoping that I'm one of the ones. And I frankly expect that I might be. But, you know, don't ask for any answers there. You just make sure that you communicate. Now, third pearl that I want to leave you with, there's two types of currencies in any environment. The performance currency and the relationship currency. The performance currency is the currency that you generate from doing an outstanding job. You deliver, the work is right, it's beyond reproach, it's always on time. And remember, when I talk about currency, currency is something that you use to get something else. You spend it. But I want you to remember that a dollar is not a dollar is not a dollar. Performance currency is very valuable very early on in your career because it will do three things for you. It will get you noticed. It'll get you a reputation. It will get you paid and promoted. And the third thing that it will do is it may attract a sponsor. And many of you have heard me talk about sponsors before. So performance currency is quite valuable. But I want you to think about that dollar as $1.50. Now, let's talk about relationship currency. Once you get 3 to 4 years in your career, the performance currency is not as valuable. It is assumed that you will deliver, that you will do a great job, that you never let anybody down, because it got you a reputation. That's already assumed. The relationship currency is more important because your ability to move up in any organization is a function of somebody's judgment. Judgment about whether or not you're ready. Judgment about whether or not the team will follow you. Judgment about whether or not you will be successful. And judgments, ladies and gentlemen, judgments are directly influenced by relationships. Directly influenced by relationships. So if you don't have the relationship, it will be very difficult for you to be able to move up in an organization. And that relationship currency is worth 2 1/4. Now why? Let me give you the example. If I know Steve and I know Samuel, and they both want to become vice presidents, but I have a great relationship with Steve, and I know Samuel. They have the same experiential tool chest. They have the same reputation. They have the same educational background. They've been at the company for the same amount of time. And the only difference is that I have a relationship with Steve and I don't have a relationship with Samuel. And the decision is being made behind closed doors. And it's my currency that's being used. I am going to back Steve all day long. Why? Because of the relationship, I perceive, may not be true, but I perceive that I can influence his success. I perceive that if things start going awry, I can pull him aside and talk to him and have him turn it around. Because we have a relationship, I'm willing to provide air cover for him. Because we have a relationship, I'm willing to use my influence with other influencers in that environment. I don't know Samuel, but I can influence Steve, so I think. I can impact his success. And after all, it's my currency being used. So I want a return on my investment. So I'm going to back Steve all day long. So the moral of the story is if you have not invested in those relationships, it's going to be very difficult for someone to spend that capital on you behind closed doors that will allow you to get those extra opportunities, that will allow you to get that bonus. Now, I tell you, I hear people say to me all the time, well, I'm just going to do my job. I'm just going to keep my head down and do my job. I don't have to play any of those politics. I'm going to let my work speak for me. Well, guess what? The work doesn't talk. It does not speak. You're the one who has to talk about the work. You're the one who has to talk about your contribution. If I had $1 every time I heard someone says, I'll let my work speak for me, I wouldn't be working anymore. It does not work that way. You have to build the relationships. Now, I know some of us in the room have trust issues. Trust issues, right? But if you allow your trust issue because someone didn't treat you right way back when, or someone seems like they're not approachable, or every time you try to talk to somebody, they seem like they don't want to be bothered. If you let that bother you and you don't invest in those relationships, it will impede your ability to ascend with compensation and with platform, i.e. the next job. So you must invest. And don't be put off because somebody seems like they don't want to be bothered. Unless you are clairvoyant, you don't know what they're thinking. You should invest anyway. Spend your time trying to get to know them so they can feel comfortable backing you behind closed doors. And I mentioned the trust issue because I know I had it too. I did not want to engage. I wanted to come in and put my head down and do the work. And then I started to realize that I was getting further and further on the outside of the circle. I wasn't within the fabric. So when said managing director say, hey, you know, Carla, what do you think about me putting Carla on there? Then people would say, I don't know. That's not the answer he wants to get. The answer you want them to say, oh, yeah, she's great. Oh, yeah, I would do that all day long. Easy, quick. Didn't even take 10 seconds. But if they don't know you, no one's going to say that. So you must invest in your environment and build those relationships. And oh, by the way, it's not that difficult. Building relationships at work is no different than the way you build relationships in your personal life. So you think about the people who are close to you in your personal life. How did they get close? Frequency of touch. Just kept spending time with them. Think about the person that you're close to here at the College of New Rochelle. You guys stood in line, you registered together, and then you said, hey, you going to the game? Yeah, I'm going to the game. Well, let's walk over together. Hey, you taking that economics class? Okay, so hold me a seat. Or you going to so-and-so? Okay, keep me, right? And you kept spending more time with that person, and that's how it got to be someone that you had a relationship with. So finally, I'm going to say this to you about managing through change. Change is the one constant that you will have in your life. You will have personal and professional change. The easiest way to manage through change, as I like to say, is to keep flexible knees. You can't even begin to think about the opportunities that will come to you in the next 2 to 5 years. And for those of you who are millennials and extras in the room, you will have the great privilege of being able to have 5 to 6 different careers, not jobs, but careers in your professional journey. Just think about it. 10 years ago, no one could say, I wanted to be CEO of Facebook. It didn't exist. No one could say, I wanted to be Chief Human Productivity Officer, not Chief HR Officer, but Chief Keeper of the Culture Officer. There are all kinds of titles now that exist that did not exist 10 years ago. So you should always stay flexible and be willing to change. All of the companies that are competing today in every single industry are competing around innovation. And if you don't show up as somebody who is comfortable with change and someone who is thinking about new ideas, you will be uncompetitive in that environment. So you want to show that you are comfortable being an innovator. You want to show that you are comfortable with change. As President Huntington said, I talk about what it means to be a leader in Strategize to Win. And good leaders understand leverage. They understand that they won't always have the right idea, that somebody on their team might have a better idea, so they create an environment where people want to contribute. And when people are looking for your contribution, contribute. Don't sit in a team meeting and don't contribute. Why are you valuable? You didn't say anything. E stands for making sure that you have an efficient process. If somebody is working for you, you need to make sure you define what success looks like. Because if you can define what success looks like, you will maximize their productivity and they will want to contribute because they know what a good job looks like for you. A is all about authenticity, and you guys know how I feel about authenticity. Being your authentic self is your competitive advantage. Nobody can be you the way that you can be you. D is about being decisive and valuing diversity. Diversity is important because that's the only way you get to the right idea. If you don't have different ideas in the room, you can't get to that one idea that will allow you to obtain and retain a leadership position. E stands for being engaged. Everybody is motivated by something else. Some of us are motivated by money. Some of us are motivated by title. Some of us are motivated by the public at a girl. But if you're a good leader, you will understand what motivates your people, and you will know how to make sure that you get maximum contribution because of who they are as individuals. And the R stands for taking risk. You must be comfortable taking risk in this environment. And you guys have heard me talk about that before. If you're not comfortable taking risk, you will definitely not be on a leadership platform. And being uncomfortable taking risks means you're scared. Means you're scared. And remember what I said, fear has no place in your success equation. So as I close, I say this to you, that success does not just happen. You must be intentional. You must be intentional about your performance. You must be intentional about your communication. You don't ask, you don't get. And you must be intentional about your relationships. You must strategize if you want to win. I thank you, and the floor is yours. Thank you. Questions? Yes, ma'am. Good evening. Yes. So Thea said, in the book, I talk about the fact that you will have 6 to 8 modules of 5. So think about someone with a 30-year career. my thesis is that today, in order to maximize your pay and to maximize what I call your power platform, how you're getting promoted, the titles that you have, that you will have to move around every 5 or so years. Now, here's the caveat. If the company that you are working with is doggedly committed to innovation and reinvention, then they could present a value proposition that says you need to stay there longer than that 5 years. And you might choose to do 2 of those modules of 5 in one place, okay? Which means now you're there for 10 years. But you want to make sure that you're working with a leader, right? And if your aspiration is to work with a leader, by definition, you're going to have to change because leadership changes now every 4 or 5 years. If you think about the companies that are on top, there are very few companies that are still on top 5 years later. So if you want to work for a leader, by definition, you will probably have to change. Now, again, my exception is if the company or the organization is doggedly committed to innovation and reinvention, they may present a value proposition that says, no, 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 it's worth me staying here. So, for example, the company that's been doing that now for more than 2 modules is Apple. Right? Now, I'm not telling everybody to go work for Apple. I'm not saying that, right? But what I'm saying is that company keeps reinventing itself, right? So if you're somebody that's sitting in that environment, it's a very different company than what it was in 2004. You know, how many iPhones have we gone through? The first one wasn't even out, right? Look at the size of an iPad now. Look at the size of an iPod now. You know, 10 years ago, we were still walking around with the compact disc on the hip, right? And now that thing is like a postage stamp, right? So that they're presenting a value proposition if you're an engineer for sure that might argue that maybe you stay there. So you have to think about what the company is doing in positioning itself as a leader in its environment is what I'm saying. Okay? All right. Yes, sir. The 4th pearl. The last one I ended with was talking about leadership. So that was the relationship currency. Yes. That's chapter 5. Mm-hmm. Yes.
I just picked up your book.
Okay.
Thank you. My name is Deborah. I'm curious. You said in the beginning, my ability to get a new opportunity has very little to do with my...
The prerequisite experience, what you've done in the past. Okay.
So for me, being out in the market for approximately 30 years now, and basically living what you spoke about initially, getting a job, having to have a job, having a family, the family's the priority, and now I'm at that stage where, because I didn't follow these steps, I've kind of leveled out. So I'm currently thinking about what is next. And based on my past experience, that's a whole new environment for me. So I'm thankful that you're here, grateful I got the book. Any suggestions?
Absolutely. So good. Deborah's going to make this real easy. Okay. All right, Deborah. So tell me what you'd like to do. Okay. So that means you need to read the first 3 chapters, girl. So, okay. So give me an idea. In a perfect world, I'll tell you that I'll pay you whatever you want to get paid.
I love fashion.
Okay, you like fashion and you like helping people. Okay, so give me a sense, Deborah, of what you have done in the past. What I'm trying to get is some of your experience. Okay.
Initially, I started out in banking, left banking, went into being a civil servant, was a civil servant with the city of New York for about 8 years. In the last 20 years, I've been working for New York City Union. And I'm doing health and safety, and I'm a health and safety coordinator. Now, I like that job because it's a field job, you're outside. It's pretty much a male-dominated field. So I could branch off and do industrial hygiene. I could branch off and probably do consulting. But it just doesn't fit in my gut. I want something entirely different.
And what do you mean when you say health and safety field person?
I'm the person that does inspections. I'm the person that does walkthroughs for new buildings, new renovations. I'm the person that deals with asbestos, mold, vermin, ventilation, ergonomics. I'm that person.
Okay, and what's the thing that you did between banking and the health safety thing?
I was doing case management for the city of New York, providing home care for the elderly and the disabled.
Home care for the elderly. Okay, okay. And what in your person can tell me, you said you like fashion. Do you like to wear fashion? You think you want to design fashion? Why fashion?
It's always been something that's just resonated with me.
So you're intrigued by how new brands get out there, you're intrigued by the fabrics that they use, you're intrigued by the designs?
I'm intrigued by the fact that fashion kind of recycles itself. The only thing that's different is the material and maybe a few tweaks. I think that there are some things that we as women wear, we use, we need, that could be a little bit more comfortable for us, that could have a little longevity. I see that we've become more of a throwaway society. We don't have a lot of the classic things. Women aren't building wardrobes, they're buying outfits. I see that it's kind of wasteful financially, and there has to be a way in which women can capitalize on the budgets and incomes that they have in order to make themselves presentable in the marketplace and feel good about themselves and be comfortable.
All right, I got it. So here are a couple suggestions for you. One, you could have an interesting story with a startup fashion brand, okay? So somebody who's just trying to get out there in the marketplace, and I'm going to give you that story in a second. The other thing you could do is to go with an established brand, right, that's actually trying to reposition itself. You know, so I'll say like a Liz Claiborne, okay, for example. The third thing you could do is to look at one of these innovative brands that's actually trying to churn out a lot of different things, you know, like a Spanx, for example, especially since you were talking about women's clothing. So here's the story that I would say, and let's say that I'm interviewing for a job at Spanx. I'm really interested in working at Spanx because it's been one of the most provocative brands that I've ever seen in the marketplace. It started off looking at women's undergarments, and at first blush, you might wonder why undergarments so interesting. But you've come up with a new product that makes it fun, that makes it sexy, and at the end of the day, it's also durable. I also like the way that you guys are reinventing yourself. I'm interested in changing my career where there's something that connects to a consumer that I understand, which would happen to be a woman, and also allows you to build relationships so you can get that data, that market data that will help you figure out what's that next product. And as a field consultant, that's all I did all day long in health and safety. I had to build new relationships out there in the field. I had to learn pretty quickly. I had to have a good eye. I had to learn how to do due diligence and walk into a building and sort of figure out where the problems were. So as you're developing a new product for this brand, I think I can anticipate where the problems might be. And the fact that I can go in the field and build a relationship, I think I can get good market data for you that will help inform the new product. And I think I really like fashion because of how dynamic it is. It always changes. Every quarter you're thinking about what's the new season going to look like when you get to Fashion Week. And because I am resourceful, I have great due diligence skills, great relationship building skills. I learned very quickly. I knew nothing about health and safety. I think I can understand some of the intricacies around fashion. I'd like to get a shot. Okay? Because what are they buying? Right? They're buying my ability to connect. I'll say, I know the consumer. I'm a woman. I like it, but I know how to go and talk to this woman too. I can figure out things pretty quickly. I can walk in and figure out what the problems are. And when you're trying to create new products, you need to be able to anticipate where the mistakes and the problems are going to be really quickly, right? So that's what I would sell. Now, you got to make sure that if you're going to be fashion, you got to go in fashion, right? That's the thing. So, you know, either you already know how to do that or go talk to some of your friends, right? So, all right. Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Ebony Gibson. How do you rebuild a work relationship once it's already been messed up?
Yes.
What do you do from that point?
Okay, so her question was, how do you rebuild a work relationship when it's already messed up, right? Huh?
If something's not right and I don't like what's said to me, I need it clarified more. And I always ask for everything in black and white. So now if I do an internship at work, they don't want to have these correct it, and I want it in black and white, so if it happens again, I have my proof.
Okay, so here we go. All right, so what's your name? Ebony? Okay, so you guys heard what Ebony said, right? She is perceived as being very, very aggressive, right? And she said, no, I'm not aggressive. If something's not right, I just want to make sure it's not right, right? And I want it in black and white, so you can't come back and tell me it's not right, right? That's what, are you with me? Right. So there are a couple of issues going on here, Ebony. Okay. So the first issue is how you're being perceived in the marketplace. And your colleagues here who've heard me talk about perception can tell you my spin on that, but it's easy for you to change. But you're going to have to work with me a little bit here, right? Because if they're already thinking about you as aggressive, how long have you been there?
About 5 years.
About 5 years. So it's going to take a little while before they'll actually start to buy the new Ebony. And the key to make them buy it is you must be consistent. So I'm going to give you some, and what is the job itself?
I'm in childcare. I work in a group home, and I'm in school now for social work. So I would have to do an internship shadowing another social worker.
Right. So she's in childcare now, and she wants to be a social worker. So in order for her to get there, she has to do an internship. But none of the social workers want to touch her because she seemed as being aggressive, right? So the first thing is, and let me just tell you, even though you're saying no, I'm not, it's like buying a car, right, or selling your car. If you think this is my baby, I've taken great care of my car is worth $15,000, and I'm only going to sell it for $15,000, but you get 5 offers at $8,000, guess what your car is worth? $8,000, right? Because the market is speaking, and the market values your car at 8. So the market is saying that you are aggressive. So everybody can't be wrong. So here's 3 things for you. Number 1, don't forget the power that's on your face. Okay, and especially, I'm going to call my sisters out here, the black women, okay? We forget about the, we forget about the power. I see all those amens over there. I see y'all going like this, right? We forget about the power that's on the face, right? And so often we're walking around like this.
Yes.
Don't bother me. I'm just here to do my job, right? I just want you, right? So you got to be very careful about that, right? So when this is very unapproachable. Right? As people start saying things like, oh, she's aggressive, she's not a team player, she's not approachable, and guess what? You can't lead if other people don't want to follow. Right? So this has a lot of power. Has a lot of power. So watch that, right? And you'll be surprised how people are much more willing to approach you. That's the first thing I'm going to say. Second thing, your language, right? Watch your language. So instead of saying, I just want to make it right, you know, I just want to make sure I understand what you say, I want it black and white. You know what you want to say? Okay, let me repeat to you what I think I heard you say, because I want to make sure that I get it right so I can deliver. I think I heard you say X, Y, and Z. You know why those words are more powerful? Everybody values being heard. Everybody values being heard. So when you say, I heard you, you just created some value in this exchange, because it's like, oh, she's listening. Oh, okay, right? And then the third thing you want to do is use words like, well, I just want to be helpful there. Well, you know I'm a team player. Well, you know I try as hard as I can. And you know I'll make sure that I'll deliver for you, right? We, team, I, for you, right? So that you can now make a connection back into the organization. You're not an island. So start using some of those words, right? And then you do management 101, what I call man-on-man combat. So the person who really, really doesn't like you and is probably spreading, oh, no, mess with,
the director.
Right, okay, okay. So what you want to do is you want to go sit down, and we're going to call her Barbara. Barbara, I know that, you know, I think I come off in the environment as being somebody who's very aggressive and very tough. And frankly, that's just been the veneer that I've been wearing, because I just want to make sure that I do a good job. And I think it has not worked out well and it hasn't gone well. And I could use some help. You know, what do you think I need to do? Because this is how I'm really feeling. I want to do a good job. I want to be a team player, and I need some help with that. Now, Barbara may be like, huh, right? She may not give it to you, but that's okay. Then you go to Samantha, and you say, Samantha, I'm really trying to do what I can to do a good job, because I think I've been misperceived in the environment, and I could use some help. Because now you're tapping into the one thing we have in common as humans, and that's a need to be needed. Right? So when you're tapping in my need to be needed, somebody's going to help you. Somebody's going to give you some feedback. Do not debate it. Even if what you think they're telling you is crap, do not debate. Just absorb, because you're going to get all that good data. And now it's going to tell you how you need to make sure you're messaging yourself. But stay consistent, Ebony.
I'm very consistent. That's
Good.
Yeah.
Once you stay consistent, then people will start to buy it. It's like, ooh, what happened to Ebony? Ooh, did Barbara talk to her? Ooh. They won't buy it at first, and somebody's going to test you, right? And when they come in to test you, even though you might want to go, just go, right? And keep rolling. And then they'll start to say, oh, Ebony's okay. All right. And then somebody will take you on and say, okay, I'm going to help you. And give it 90 days. 3 months.
Thank you.
Okay? Yes, and then yes. And Tiffany, I'm counting on you to keep me honest here, okay, with timing, okay?
Hello, hi. I actually wanted to ask you something about the quite opposite if you're perceived on the other end of the spectrum.
As too quiet?
As either too quiet or you will say yes too much. And how do you say no, especially if you're building your performance currency and relationship currency? As you keep building that, people are going to depend on you more, and you're going to want to say yes in order to transition and continue to build your relationship currency.
Yeah, that is an outstanding question, because that is something that we are very guilty of doing. You know, we just take on more and take on more and take on more. And the problem with that is you weigh yourself down so much with so much to do that you don't leave any time where you can keep your head up and start to look for where the opportunities are, because you're like this so much executing. So you have to make sure you leave yourself some room. So now you're saying, they know me as the go-to girl. I take it on. So the next time somebody brings you something, you say, oh, you know what, Mary, I'd love to be able to do this, but I'm working on A, B, and C for Paul. So I can't, you know, because I obviously want to make sure I do a good job for you. And if I take this on, I might drop the ball. And I do not want to drop the ball for you because I got these 3 things. And the mayor says, but you know what, my thing is more important than Paul's. Say, okay, you know what, let's get Paul in the room. Because if you guys work it out between the 2 of you and you have a higher priority, I have no problem with that, right? And then that's how you start to prioritize, right? But if you keep taking it on, they will keep giving it to you. And then you won't have an ability to ascend. You just get known as the executor. No one can see you doing something else. And remember, one of the keys also to getting promoted is that you have to behave in that job, right? While you may be an associate and you want to be a vice president, you need to start acting like a vice president. That doesn't mean you don't do the associate's job, but you need to start strategizing, speaking of your strategic skills, talking about your managerial skills, and demonstrating that wherever you can. If you leave yourself no white space, no room to do that, you won't be able to demonstrate, right? So don't keep taking it on. You're now into the land of diminishing marginal returns. They're not going to pay you anymore for that. I remember at one point in my career, I didn't want to take any vacation. I wanted to be known as a person that's working really hard. And one of my colleagues put me aside and said, I just want to let you know, we're not going to pay you one more dime for not taking your vacation. I don't know what else you think you're going to get, but we're not going to pay you one more dime. You're just going to be tired. That woke a sister up. Yeah, right over here. Yes.
Hello, how you doing? How do you reinvent yourself? Like, if you've been doing the same thing for so long, how do you reinvent yourself to get into a new work place?
And it was very much like what we were talking about earlier on. So tell me what you're doing now.
Right now, I'm unemployed, but
okay,
I've
well,
been doing retail for so long.
Okay.
But that's
and you've been a retail a person on the floor?
manager, everything.
Okay.
I just want to do something different than retail.
And what is that something different?
Social working right now. I want to do social work.
Okay.
No,
So
actually, I want to get my case so I can be a drug counselor.
A what counselor?
Drug counselor.
Oh, a drug counselor. Oh, okay, great. So you were not going to have any problems transitioning because you're in school now, right? Okay. So that's one of the beauties of when you actually do make a transition and you are in school, then school becomes the thing that allows you to have a great story. Because then you say to someone, if someone says, well, why do you want to become a drug counselor? Then you can say, well, tell me why you want to become a drug counselor.
Because I want to help people, you know, get
off their addictions. There's a lot of ways to help people, right?
It is. More like a personal experience. I really want to help in that way.
Okay, all right, I got you. Okay, so then the story becomes, you know, one of the reasons that I came to the College of New Rochelle is that they have one of the best social worker programs in the state, and I wanted to be trained by the best. And the reason that I'm interested in becoming a drug counselor is that I saw a lot of different experiences as I was growing up, and I saw how if someone found themselves in that trouble, it was very hard for them to recover and be able to go on to do something productive. And I love working with people. That's one of the reasons I went into retail, because of all the careers that I could have done coming out of high school, it was the one that I knew that would allow me to continue to interact with people over and over again, and different kinds of people. And I think for 20 years being in retail, I can tell you honestly, there's not a personality that you could put in front of me that I wouldn't be able to penetrate, connect with, and build that relationship, which I think will be very valuable to me as a drug counselor, where people don't want to talk about their problems. And I can get in there and get them to talk about it and get them comfortable in doing it. If I can create the sales that I created on the floor in all kinds of retail, I can certainly get people to think about things differently than the way they walked in to an encounter with me. And that becomes your,
Thank you.
okay. And so this is the last, she said this is the last one. Right here. She was the last one. I'll come back to you after this.
Hi. So my background is in marketing. I have like over 15 years experience in marketing, and I'm looking to go into investor relations marketing.
Ah.
Having some difficulty penetrating that market because the experience they're asking for is relevant experience in like finance and things like that. My experience is like in entertainment or like traditional marketing.
Yep.
How do I make that transition? How do I?
Sure. And you do not have to have financial experience in order to be in investor relations, but you do have to be able to understand financial concepts. So you need to go into that interview demonstrating that you can understand a balance sheet, you can understand an income statement, you know the difference between the two, you can understand a cash flow statement, right? Because a lot of times in investor relations, you're going to be talking to an investor, and they're going to say, well, what happened to the company's sales? Right? And you have to say, you know, we've had 12% sales for the last 3 years. Now we've gone to 8%. And the reason we've gone to 8% was because our investment in the following 3 things. And what our chairman is saying is blah, blah, blah. So you're going to have to be able to show that you are comfortable with the language. But the key success factor for being an investor relations person is to be able to sell the company no matter what, or be able to explain and to be able to get people to listen to you. Because if the company has missed a quarter, then people are all over the investor relations person, right? And you need to be able to explain and connect and build relationships, because when you're out there trying to get them to buy the story that the CEO is spinning, you need them to pick up the phone. So that's what you need to message when you're in those interviews. I'm comfortable with financial concepts. I know the difference between an income statement and a balance sheet. I know your company very well. This is the way you guys message this thing. And in my experience as a marketing person, I probably would have included the following 3 or 4 things. Now I say, oh, she's thinking. She knows what an investor relations person does. She knows how to sell a story. She can build relationships. That's what you need to sell in that interview. But if they think you don't understand financial concepts, then they will ding you for that, not because you have to be a guru, but you got to be able to talk about and talk with that language. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you have been fabulous. I'll be over there signing books. I'll be able to answer your question afterwards, but I need to let President talk. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Fabulous.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's absolutely fabulous, and I can't thank you enough, Carla, for spending time here. Looking on all those lists without being incredibly busy, so I'm profoundly grateful that you spent time with us this evening. It was wonderful. It's the first time I'm so excited to hear more about it, and now I think we're going to the next tour to more living rooms and so Tiffany has a little gift for you guys.
Thank you. Oh, thank you.